Welcome to Popular Cruising. I am your host, Jason Leppert, and I'd like to explore what changes are likely to come to cruising as a result of this pandemic once sailings do resume. We don't know exactly when cruising will return, but tentative plans are in place, and the current Centers for Disease Control and Prevention no sail order expires mid-July, so voyages will likely start back up soon thereafter. As a vaccine will probably not be ready by then, I predict there will be pre-vaccine changes to cruise travel in the short term and post-vaccine modifications in the long term. So let's take a look at what we can expect. It's a controversial topic right now, but as on planes, face masks will likely be a temporary consideration on board. However, it is unlikely passengers will want to wear one for the duration of their vacation. A recent patent filing from Royal Caribbean Cruises Limited indicates implementation of a so-called sea face for viral isolation, but it may only be required of crew members. Alternatively, to avoid the need for guest masks, a pre-boarding medical screening of some kind, whether that be temperature checks or more vigorous rapid testing, like what Emirates is doing before its flights, should be expected in the near future. Or an immunity passport could come into play, allowing pierside passengers previously cleared to board. In either case, guests themselves will have to participate in greater hygiene than is usually the case, in both the short term and the long term. That is, they will need to wash their hands thoroughly and frequently. Cruising often gets a bad rap because of diseases such as norovirus that commonly spread because people don't practice basic hygiene. Disinfecting one's hands is a simple step that's easier than having to wear a mask, so it should not be an inconvenience. Also, those who like to avoid crowds on board will appreciate what is sure to be a lighter density of people roaming the decks, at least initially. To help with social distancing for a time, planes are foregoing middle seat placement, and cruise ships will probably cap their passenger counts to a smaller percentage as well. In so doing, the passenger space ratio, or the amount of ship volume available per guest, will pleasantly increase. And it won't just be fewer passengers on board. Overall fleets and specific ships are likely to roll back in phases. Just as vessels are slowly disembarking crew to their international homes currently, restaffing ships will also likely be a relatively slow process. Carnival Cruise Line, for instance, plans to restart operations with only 8 ships from 3 North American home ports, with the remainder coming in the month to follow. Cruise planners have similarly predicted that only a half or a third of fleets will immediately set sail. But rest assured, the most popular ships will definitely be among them. One major challenge to still overcome is determining where any of these cruises will sail in the near future. International destinations will eventually reopen, but it's not fully known which will be ready from the start. The Alaska 2020 season continues to be eliminated by lines, at least those with large ships, due to Canadian port restrictions and other considerations. Also closer to North America, it has not been verified when popular Caribbean and Mexican ports will reopen. If not these locales, home porting cruise ships will have few alternatives other than regional coastal voyages, but those are restricted by the Passenger Vessels Services Act of 1886, which requires foreign flag passenger vessels carrying guests between U.S. destinations to first call on a foreign port. And farther away, the limiting factor will be flight availability, as well as other international countries' timing and welcoming visitors back. No matter what happens, there will probably have to be deals and discounts on cruising to restore demand, at least among new-to-cruise travelers in the months to follow. They may not be showing up in spades yet, but once departure dates are more set in stone, they'll surely be available for the picking. In fact, Oceania Cruises just announced the ultimate sale, with rates starting as low as $9.99 per person. When you do find the deal that most appeals to you, we recommend booking through our sponsor, Fairy Godmother Vacations, who will take care of all your trip planning absolutely for free, enhancing your cruise with lots of complimentary added perks. To easily get started, request your free quote by clicking on the link here or in the description box, or traditionally contact them using the information below. If there's any negative to discounts, it might be a reduction in a voyage's value. Cruises have always been and will continue to be a fantastic value, offering lots of bang for the buck. But as bottom line prices fall, so too will some things need to give. That might translate into temporary reductions in food and service quality, as well as the increase of a la carte and package pricing to compensate, such as specialty dining and drink prices. But what about long term? That is after a vaccine becomes available, which we're all hopeful will be sooner than later. You can expect enhanced sanitation measures, many of which were already in place before cruise lines voluntarily suspended operations. Genting Cruise Lines, the corporate cousin to Crystal Cruises, has a very detailed list of objectives, including everything from certain cabins being earmarked for potential quarantine use to buffets switching to full service. It probably comes as no surprise that buffets will no longer be considered a healthy option moving forward, at least not self-service ones. In many cases, buffets are already fully served within the first day or so of a cruise, so you should expect that to be the format for the duration. That's certainly not to say the usual variety and quantity of food will decrease, but its presentation will have to change to be more sanitary. Or if they ever return to self-service, greater enforcement of hand washing before entering would have to become the norm. An additional shipboard venue that might see similar changes is the casino. As another very tactile experience, gambling may have to come with added sanitation of surfaces, as well as participants themselves. Expect to see hand washing become an element here, or a reduction of gaming overall. Both Disney Cruise Line and Viking already have no casinos on board. With a greater emphasis on onboard health moving forward, casinos filled with secondhand smoke may become something entirely of the past. Just as Genting is outlining steps to cluster cabins for any possible quarantine measures, guests can expect better, more innovative onboard medical facilities in the future. There may even be a medical zone containing staterooms and a full shipboard hospital, complete with a separate food galley, that can be isolated like fire zones, and watertight zones can be traditionally sealed off for safety. One change that may or may not occur is in part related to the medical facilities. Many ships had difficulty disembarking ill passengers at the start of the pandemic because they were registered abroad, and local ports did not want to shoulder the risk of spreading disease ashore. Rather than, say, register a ship in NASA, there's a possibility cruise ships and governments will consider domestic U.S. registry, should international policies evolve to include cruise ships built overseas, etc. Following the earlier change of reduced guest capacity in the short term, there may be an increased focus on ships' passenger space ratios, which are calculable by dividing a vessel's tonnage by its capacity in the long term. That is, travelers may find they prefer less crowded ships, as they might discover a preference for flights without middle seats. Currently, the most voluminous passenger space ratios are reserved for upscale and luxury ships, but that could become true of mainstream and premium ones as well, should the economy of scale remain profitable enough. Speaking of economy of scale, generally the larger a ship, the less expensive it is to operate per passenger, making for lower fares for guests and better profits for lines. This, plus the ability to offer a multitude of onboard activities, dining and entertainment, made behemoths previously popular. However, a frequent complaint of cruise naysayers is the notion of being with thousands of other travelers aboard a floating petri dish, which itself is a phrase and in fact a myth cruise loyalists can't stand, given how sanitary we know ships really are. But for better or for worse, perception is reality, and mega ships, however enticing with all their bells and whistles, may in time grow out of favor. Still, larger vessels may also be better equipped at handling outbreaks. Nonetheless, even before the pandemic, there was a counter-trend to building megaships, as many smaller alternatives were also being constructed. We're talking cruise ships with capacities in the hundreds instead of the thousands, as well as even smaller expedition ones. As river cruises have become more mainstream, smaller vessels have become more en vogue, and that trend may pick up even more steam moving forward, provided they are medically well equipped. In the end, the market will decide, but it will be interesting to see which direction big or small sustains. One remaining consequence of the pandemic is an altered schedule for upcoming new ships and refurbishments of existing vessels. New ones that remain under construction are likely to be pushed back months or more, and ones that have yet to lay their keels may even be cancelled if budgets have been cut. In the same way, refurbishments on the calendar may also be shifted or altogether cancelled. Ultimately, though, there is still great hope for the cruise industry and its eventual rebound. There is no doubt lots of pent-up demand to soon sail again, and we all look forward to the opportunity to take our next cruise vacation. Thanks so much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe to our channel while hitting that bell icon to be notified of new videos, watch our library of other ones, and visit popularcruising.com.